How to stack your first 100,000 in savings and investments step by step. Now this is a direct guide how to achieve 100k liquid investments. It doesn't matter what you want to invest in, stocks, crypto, whatever. And seeing 100k, seeing the 6 digits is an incredibly rewarding milestone, and honestly it's a pivotal event that allowed you to almost take your foot off the gas. You take a breather, you can recalibrate, you can reanalyze from a position of power and stability. You stop acting out of desperation and you start to live life a little bit more loosely. 100k is, in my opinion, the top goal to hit in your 20s. Alright, so let's get to it. 100k, to many of you, sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, don't get me wrong. But the very first thing I want you to do before anything is to understand that when you break down the figures, 100k is way more achievable than it really sounds. So if you manage to pull together and invest between 1.3 to 2,000 per month at a conservative, let's say 7% growth rate, you would be able to hit 100k in 3 to 6 years. 3 to 6 years. 1,300 to 2,000 is incredibly doable. That is dollars, by the way, so yeah, roughly between 1,000 to 2,000 GBP, USD, doesn't matter. And you can do this on the minimum wage. It's simple. The first step is to just limit your expenses. Cut out any unnecessary expense from your life. If you want to achieve this goal as quickly as possible, it really does help to be as frugal as you can. So cut out the takeaway, junk food, any vice or unhealthy habit that is taking hundreds, if not thousands from your pocket a month. Okay, thousands is a stretch, but anything that takes money from your pocket, if it's not helping your goal, cut it out. So even down to your meals, eat modestly, live below your means. If you can, you should live with your parents. Your journey will become a lot easier. You know, rent is a big commitment every month, and having that amount of money leave your bank account every month is a big setback, to be honest. You know, if you're making 1 to 2k a month, it's basically impossible to invest towards your future if 80% of your paycheck is gone on bills and rent. But I do understand that not everybody can live rent free, not everybody can live with their parents. It's understandable. But if you want to approach this from a ruthlessly optimal perspective, the most optimal and ideal solution would be living at home. Maybe you help out a bit on groceries, bit of bills, maybe you keep the gym membership, but ideally you keep your expenses to a minimum. And when you live frugally, you now have the ability to put at least 1,000 into your investments. And if your income can even slightly increase and perhaps you reduce your expenses just a little bit more, now you've got maybe 1.5k available. Maybe you can push up to 2k. It all depends on how much you earn and how much you save. You find this extra disposable income by living well below your means. You know, think of those super athletes that make tens of millions and end up blowing all their money by the end of their careers, you know, compared to the janitors who just slowly accumulate their wealth. And this leads right into step 2. Don't let lifestyle inflation creep up on you. So lifestyle inflation is when your income increases, your spending also increases at the same rate. So essentially you're left with the same amount of disposable income at the end of each month. Again, think of Mike Tyson, 10 million a fight, spending 98% of that 10 million on houses, mansions and pet tiger. So like I said, cut out any unnecessary spending that may tempt you as you start to earn more. Saving even £50 a month is another 600 a year. Magic. When you get a raise, when you start making more money, let's say this month you make 2k, next month you make 3k, don't spend an extra 1k just because you have it available. You need more disposable income so you can put that money into investments. But I had a co-worker that was earning maybe just a bit more than me. He was about 40, 50 years old, and he was spending a ridiculous amount of money on cigarettes. Something crazy, 1,000 to 1.5k. It was insane. Like, he was smoking a lot, but 1,000 cigarettes a month is beyond insane. And yet he was only getting paid a bit more than me. So who was really making more that month, me or him? I was keeping the majority of my income, he was spending the majority of his. And this is the point, guys. You can hit 100k on a regular working salary. You can work at McDonald's and have achieved 100k in 3 to 5 years, and that's no exaggeration either. Funny enough, another guy I worked with, he was 19, so a year younger than me. He's been working in hospitality, like restaurants and whatnot, since he was 15, 16, and in those years he'd managed to save over 70k. Mind you, he's probably got more to his name than that 50-year-old who was spending 1k on cigarettes every month. And yeah, you may think you're young and you have time to mess around a little bit and live life, but this is an expensive trap that often becomes a person's worst mistake later on in their life. If you don't maximize how much you invest during your 20s, you lose the most important decade that you have to accumulate as much compound growth as possible. And the longer you let your money work, the greater your benefit will be from the exponential growth approaching your 40s, 50s, into your 60s and 70s. And the best way to get to this stage is to automate your investments. Step 3, automate your investments. So every time you get paid, the first thing that I want you to do with the money is to allocate it straight away to your investment account. So I used to get paid on Friday, either Friday night when the money hits or Saturday morning. First thing I do is send off the majority of my money into my investment account. So set aside any money for any bills or rent if you have to or anything like that. Then the rest of the money, put it into your investment. Now you can set up a direct debit. So direct order essentially literally automates. You don't have to do anything, but I would advise for you to do this process yourself, to manually put the money and to send it off yourself. I mean, it got me in the habit of mentally acknowledging that, okay, like I've made 1.5k, that's good. I've made 1,500, but 1,000 is gone already. So I've already transferred it into the investment account. It was never my money to begin with, it was my future self's money. So again, automate your investments. Do it either manually or through automation, up to you. If you already have the cash flow coming in, then by all means automate it, set up direct debit and let compounding do its thing. And it should go without saying, but take advantage of any tax-free or tax advantaged account that your country offers. So for my Americans, Roth IRAs or 401ks, whatever that is. You know, in the UK we have stocks and shares ISAs. The limit has gone down now to 12,000. It was 20,000, but yeah, so 12,000 tax free. You can invest every year. Take advantage of it, guys. Pension, SIPs, whatever. Again, research all these and look into what works for you, but take advantage of tax free and tax advantaged accounts. And again, really try and maximize how much you invest. Only buy things that you really need. So even this winter, I was debating buying a new winter coat because, you know, in the UK it gets pretty cold, pretty freezing, it's snowing right now, but I decided to sleep on it for a few nights, and by the end of the week I'd realized that it wasn't a necessary purchase at all. I already had a coat and it was doing perfectly fine. You know, at this age we have the most time and energy that we will ever have, and whilst having the lowest level of responsibility, you know, no kids, no mortgage, none of that. And I'm not saying you should sign yourself up for slavery or sell a kidney to maximize compound gains, but these early years account. So invest as much as you can, as soon as you can. Like I said, if you're investing at least 1,000 a month, you're well on track to 100k. And if you can dedicate yourself for 5-6 years, you can quite literally set yourself up for life in your 20s. You know, if you really grind, you can really increase your income, whether that's through business or through your job. If you can increase your income and invest 90% of that, 80-70% of that, you could hit 100k in 2 to 3 years. And I don't say that lightly, but it all depends on your discipline and financial habits. And that takes us to step 4. Regularly check your expenses, investments, and net worth. You know, make it a habit, maybe once, twice, max 3 times a month. Perhaps every Saturday, to check your weekly and monthly outgoings. Be on top of your expenses and make sure you're not being billed for anything that you don't need. It is boring, but it's required. I mean, you don't want to be charged £15 for a monthly subscription that you didn't use, or worse, a free trial that suddenly bills you at the end of the month. Also, use this day to check your net worth and investments. Keep track of the markets, but don't be too obsessive over checking the numbers multiple times a day. After all, the main goal of this journey is to put your time into increasing your income, to educate yourself. So don't spend too much time glazing your net worth, because it's not going to make you any more money than you already have. You know, take the shot, stick a move. Don't stand there admiring your work. I'd rather you put your time into something more productive. I mean, even speaking from experience, when I first started investing, it was new and exciting, and I was checking my account 2-3 times a day, watching it go up by like 50p or 1p or whatever. The profit and loss was chump change, and that's the point. When you don't have much money invested, let's say less than 1,000, maybe a few hundred, the growth is minimal. In a day, if your portfolio goes up by 1%, that's a few pounds increase max. And even at higher sums of money, it's not productive to constantly obsess over the exact number, and this often leads to really brash decision making. Again, when I was a beginner, I myself thought that I could time the markets, and I was fiddling around with my investments, which actually led to some losses in the long run. The highest performing brokerage accounts were found to be the ones that people had set up decades ago, set up their direct debits, and had literally forgotten about. Why? Because they weren't fiddled with or disrupted. You set up your account, put the money every month, check maybe a couple times a month, and let your money work. I guess if you're involved in the crypto space, there certainly is benefit to keeping up with the markets regularly, day to day, as crypto is very volatile. But what I'm saying is, be disciplined and try not to make rash decisions. Find the balance between political and financial awareness of the markets, whilst practicing patience and intentionality to delay your gratification. Don't make any stupid decisions. Step 5. Regularly affirm and remind yourself why you want to achieve the goal that you want to hit. Why do you want to hit 100k? And if possible, break down the goal into actionable steps. Think about what you need to be doing day to day or week by week. How many hours do I need to work? What tasks do I need to complete day by day to make sure that you're on track and to achieve your goals? This turns a vague ambition into a process that you can actually follow and allows you to reconnect with why you want this in the first place. You know, it's easy to get buried in day-to-day noise and lose sight of the bigger picture. So take a step back from time to time and remind yourself what success gives you. You know, do you want freedom? Do you want security? Do you want options? Do you want peace of mind? For some people, hitting 100k is about maximizing compound growth as early as they can. For others, it's about reaching a point of stability, having enough vested in your account to take a breather, to travel, or to slow down without panic. If you're paying minimum bills, you have no kids, no mortgage, and you put 100k in liquid investments in your 20s, you've bought yourself time. You can afford to take your foot off the gas if you need to, because you're no longer starting from zero. You have a solid foundation, a nest egg that's yours to your name. You have stability and you have decades of future compounding working in your favor for the rest of your life. And no one can take that away from you. That's why hitting 100k changes everything. It's not just a numerical milestone, it's a psychological and spiritual shattering. You have proved to yourself that you can do it. You know, you step out of survival mode. You've proven to yourself that you built the skill set and discipline to make 100k. And once you've done it once, you can do it again. You know, you can hit 200k, you can make 300, 500, a million maybe. And that's when the snowball effect really starts to take over. And eventually you're approaching 7 figures. And guys, this is not fancy I'm trying to sell you. It's a very realistic outcome. You stay disciplined and apply yourself consistently over 4 to 5 years. It's an objective reality that I and many people have achieved in our 20s. That's why people who've already succeeded don't rely on motivation or dreaming big. At this stage, you've shattered your glass ceilings and you don't live with the same doubts you had when you were younger. You've already proven to yourself that you can execute. So instead of hoping things work out, you build systems based on reality. If I do these tasks every day, these actions every week, over this time horizon, objectively, this will be the result. This will be the outcome. And it sounds corny, but at that point, it's no longer a question of if, but a matter of when. Remember that 19-year-old I was talking about who hit his goal of 70k? By next year, he'll be approaching 100k. And then he plans to go and travel for a few years because he has built a stable foundation that will work for him for the rest of his life. And this is the reality of a 19-year-old who worked in a sweaty kitchen for a few years. And if you can take that same framework of living frugally, limiting your expenses, avoiding lifestyle inflation, monitoring your net worth, and affirming your goals, alongside scaling your income and earning extraordinary wages, then you're on another level completely. If my colleague can do on a below average wage as a teenager, then increasing your income as a skilled adult becomes the real accelerator. At that point, saving and investing meaningful amounts isn't unrealistic, and in some cases, 100k can be reached far quicker than people expect. And you know, we're not really taught to think like this. You know, I had to go out of my way to learn this, to learn to think like the wealthy. We don't get taught this stuff at school, and it is cheesy to say, but it's the case. And it's part of why the first 100k seems so daunting to many. They're almost taught to feel intimidated by these goals. You know, young kids that maybe aren't taught financial literacy, they get a bit daunted by these sort of goals, and they don't have the framework to necessarily break down the figures and look at this from an objective, realistic lens. You know, as younger people, you're often made to feel like you have no real world experience and that 6 figures is impossible to achieve until you reach your 40s or so, if at all. But I can assure you, if you stay on track and believe in the power of compounding and financial discipline, if you invest as much as you can per paycheck and limit your expenses, and when you continue to put the time to educate yourself, to develop your skill set, and to ultimately increase your income, you will succeed. If you don't let lifestyle inflation creep up on you, if you remain disciplined, you continue to build. And even on a modest salary, you will hit 100k in your 20s. I can guarantee it, as long as you stay disciplined. It's up to you to prove to yourself that you can understand and can follow this step-by-step framework. Understand that if you do X tasks over a set time horizon, you will succeed. That's the key part. That's all I want you to take from this video. If you do X tasks over a set time horizon, success will follow. But yeah, if you found this useful, take it seriously, write your numbers down, break it into steps, you know, set goals, daily, weekly goals, and track your progress, because clarity beats motivation every time. So if you want more content like this, practical, no hype breakdowns on money, discipline, long-term thinking, consider subscribing. I'm going to be documenting what works, what doesn't, and how to build real financial stability over time. Remember, The goal isn't to get lucky, it's to build a system that makes success inevitable.